This video is going to be a commentary slash reaction to some of the news coming out this week from the Ravens training camp. I haven't really done any training camp videos. There's no film to show, obviously. And last week was kind of difficult, even for a defensive guy like myself. Perhaps you found yourself in the same boat. I'm not sure. But to get excited about last week, even though the Ravens open training camp was tough because of the daily, almost constant reporting of how well the defense was playing. Look, it was fun, except it wasn't, because we knew who the defense was dominating for 5 days, the Ravens offense. Now, it's notable, obviously, that we were without Lamar offensively, and it was also a lot of non-padded situations where the defense would generally know that it's a pass play. So something like 3 or 4 interceptions per day were reported, and we saw film of some of them on Twitter, which is really amazing that we have reporters that do that. And I understand every franchise or fan base does, but feel pretty blessed, if you ask me, to be able to see that video every day. Nonetheless, it did get kind of annoying at a certain point for a lot of reasons. Number one, each one would be reported individually with the context attached, meaning 11 on 11, which is team, or 7 on 7, or even half-field stuff, what some people refer to as 3 on 3 or 4 on 3, whatever. But what I think is missing is like some context about the overall percentage of passes thrown on a given day or in a given period. 7 on 7 is 100% pass. So it's not surprising that the defense would play better at times because they know it's a pass play. There's no run-pass conflict. Your read is predetermined for you. Early in camp, when you're not wearing pads, you do tend to see more passes thrown, at least in my experience in the level that I coach. Basically, in my opinion, there's no real running plays if you're not wearing pads, and the defense has the option for 100% effort on block destruction, period. You can tell kids or players all you want on the defensive side of the football. The professional level, I'm sure, is you probably get a higher level of execution than you do at the levels of coaches level that I coached at. You can certainly still practice your reads, your alignment, your stances, your calls, your reactions, and maybe your fits as a defense. The offensive line can work on their steps. I'm not disputing all of those things. But the overall percentage of pass plays in the script is higher in these early training camp situations before you get pads on. Now, this week, Lamar has returned, the pads have been on, and the gameplay seems to have evened out. Makes sense to me, but referring to the first week when you're without Lamar, and I don't believe you're talking about 50-50 or even 55-45 run to pass play percentage. I think you're talking about 80-20 weighted towards the pass. One way to prove it is, how many times did you see Henry run plays talked about last week? None. Maybe twice that I did. And that's because they're not running the ball at all. When you add in the factor of Lamar not being there for illness last week, I'm certainly not running down the defense saying that they don't have a ton of talent, because they have tremendous potential, I think, overall on the defensive side of the football. In some ways, I think they can be just as good, even better than last year from a talent standpoint. The coaching, the game prep, calling the coverages and the stunts at the right time, who knows how that'll be under Zach Orr. There was an imbalance of talent out there last week, and the situation, I think, was weighted heavily towards the defense when you know it's a pass play. I think it also illustrates Lamar's impact as a throwing quarterback. I think that has to be mentioned. There's no threat of scrambling at all in a lot of these early training camp situations, even against a talented, fast, and aggressive defense like we have with the Ravens. If you remove some of those options, the scramble or the run play, I think the scales tip in the defensive favor. This week, the reported gameplay has evened out. It's actually tilted in the other direction towards the offense in certain moments. Apparently, Isaiah Likely's displayed incredible playmaking and explosiveness. We saw that at the end of 2023. That's really not a surprise for Ravens fans who watched him, I think, in the last 6 games of the regular season, put up 21 catches on only 21 targets. 21 catches on 28 targets and 5 touchdowns. So you're talking about a touchdown 1 out of every 6 targets, which is a pretty amazing percentage if you ask me. Nonetheless, I still paid attention last week and read as many articles as possible, most notably the work of Jeff Zrebiec. Hopefully I'm saying his name correctly. I think he does fantastic work. I find him to be balanced and focus on the reporting, not other BS that certain people talk about. I did think it was really cool to see all the individual reports on Twitter from the various media reps. We're blessed to be able to see that. Those of us that don't get to go to camp, and there won't be a stadium practice this year, clearly, the defense was on a roll early, making life difficult for Todd Monken and our backup quarterbacks. I think it was competitive. I think that it was somewhat predictable, the competitiveness and how it would reshift or rebalance itself out this week. I do also think the way that Lamar addressed it, I just constantly refer to and kind of smile or chuckle about the way he deals with reporters. And these are hometown Baltimore reporters, obviously, so they're not coming at him like other reporters have. But when he was addressing I guess the absence, the reason for his absence, and the first thing, it's just typical Lamar, if you ask me. No, I'm not thinking that they're missing me. I'm missing them. I find him to be very disarming when he answers questions for people because to me he appears so genuine. I'm trying to get back out to those guys and just be happy around my teammates. But them missing me, the kids missing me, I love that. I love it all. I find that he answers questions, but he doesn't necessarily do it in the direction or the path that people want him to. In my opinion, he's not cliche. And that's one of the elements that first made me respect and admire his character, dating back to the pre-draft process in 2018. The first statement, again, no, I'm not thinking they're missing me. I'm missing them. Tells you a lot about Lamar Jackson, if you ask me, because I feel like so many times professional athletes are asked leading questions where they're locked into like 3 multiple choice responses, and that's it, A, B, or C. And Lamar seems like a D, none of the above kind of guy when he responds. It's refreshing to me. I think he's very kind and respectful. There's always eye contact. At least it looks like it to me. We can't see the reporters. Obviously, the cameras are on Lamar or they're on Todd Monken or Harbaugh, and I didn't realize that the pictures were so light here. I think when they do their post-practice interviews outside, they appear to be in some sunlight, so those guys are all very light there. I didn't do any saturation for those pictures, but in any case, I like how Lamar always appears to make eye contact, gives his reply with a smile, and stays above some of the nature of questioning. Maybe not necessarily from the Ravens reporters, but they were certainly asking about his absence or, well, the illness that led to his absence and what it could be. I always liked his style, always have since listening to him, like I said, talk to reporters at the Combine in 2018, I believe it was the Combine, when they were asking him about going to play quarterback in the NFL. Does any of that, Lamar's class, respect, his mature way of answering questions, does it mean anything in terms of winning games in the playoffs? Not at all. Winning the AFC Championship, beating the Chiefs, winning the Super Bowl, all of that doesn't really have anything to do with it. It's just something that I personally have noticed about him. I will spin this a little bit towards something I've noticed with regards to us Ravens fans somewhat. This mentality of, or perspective, I will wait to pay attention or get excited until they win in the playoffs. I've read it many times on social media, on Twitter or X, in the comments section of my videos as well, and even in some of the articles I read last week, some of those comment sections. That's like an absolutist mentality. It's a little off-putting, almost childish, to be honest with you, because it's difficult to fathom or understand when at the same time so many of us we look up to younger athletes or coaches that we root for. We enjoy hearing them say things like the process is the reward. The process that you're going through on a daily basis, working together, striving for some goal, can actually be more important than the goal. Of course, we want to win a Super Bowl. I don't know. I can't remember exactly who was that original quote, the process is the reward, was from. It's certainly not Harbaugh or Lamar. It sounds like Inky Johnson or something like that. But I would question people back if that's your perspective. So how many seasons in Ravens history was worth paying attention to? There's only 2 of them, 2000 and 2012. Is that it? I mean, yes, there was an incredibly difficult loss suffered by the team, the organization, and the fans and fan base in 2023. Much of it was our own doing, the way that we played. Maybe it wasn't as tough of a loss as the AFC Championship game against New England, I should say, in the 2011 playoffs. We have a chance to take the lead. We have the ball in our hands in the end zone with less than 30 seconds left in the game, trailing 23-20. It's essentially the go-ahead or game-winning score. And we all know what happened next. My point is, it would have been easy at that time for Ravens fans to have taken the attitude of, I'm not paying attention or getting excited until they win in the playoffs. Well, they did. They won it all in 2012. Maybe you did. Maybe some other people did. I think you would miss a lot of good football. That 2012 team, the next year, had a lot of hardships. They started off 9-2 at one point. I always want to counter people Ravens fans and non-Ravens fans, who describe that Super Bowl winning team as above average. Categorically not true. It reflects the fact that there's a lot of stat watchers nowadays in sports, in football, basketball, and my God, it's in baseball. It's full of them. People who know nothing about the game but can quote stats to you all day. You want to be able to do both, quote stats and know something about the game. Maybe my weakness is not being able to quote the stats, but I will give you one. That 2012 Ravens team that was started off 9-2 had just won 4 games in a row after they beat, I think, the San Diego Chargers in Week 12. They had given up 15 points or less in those 4 straight wins. Ray got hurt, and I think 2 other defensive starters went down, and I think 2 offensive starters went down. I believe we were down 5 or 6 starters overall combined on both sides of the ball 2 weeks after defeating the Chargers. Maybe that number is incorrect, but all I'd know is we're 9-2 after the Week 12 win in San Diego, and the team finishes 10-6. When you lose 4 of your last 5 games, and they in fact allowed 25 points per game over that stretch, one and done was some of the things that were said. Not going anywhere. Too old and explosive enough on offense to win. Can't win against Brady or Manning in the playoffs. Quarterback can't win big games. Maybe those aren't the exact quotes about Lamar. Maybe they're not the exact quotes about this team. But imagine if we finish 10-6 in 2024 and we lose 4 of our last 5, giving up 100 points, or maybe it was 102 over those last 5 games. We would be missing a lot of great storylines. I got even a potential heroic finish to the season like 2012. The Super Bowl, I think, concludes February 8th or February 9th in New Orleans. I hope for us, for you, as a Ravens fan, that we get to enjoy as many moments as possible, regardless of when they happen. It could be a highlight clip from training camp that's shared by the Ravens social media team. It could be something that happens with one of the rookies in a preseason game. It could be something as innocuous as a home wild card win when you're going to face Peyton Manning. Then I guess it wasn't really an innocuous wild card win in 2012. It was Ray's last home game. But when you're going up to face Denver, a 13-3 Denver team with Peyton Manning as their quarterback, they had just won 11 in a row, by the way. Yes, 11. Did anyone expect the Ravens, after going 10-6, to beat Manning and Brady on the road a year after that crushing loss in the AFC Championship game? Why am I drawing parallels to that season? I think there are a ton more parallels than are being talked about. Unfortunately, there's no stadium practice to look forward to this year. So we have a long time to wait until we can see things begin to develop in person, even in the preseason. I think 10 days at this point until the Ravens play the Eagles at home. Those social media posts, the work done by the various reporters that get to observe practice, even the content creators, not just me, but all other people, they deserve your attention. For me, at least, I think they deserve a little bit more respect. I enjoy each and every one of those social media posts. They kind of tide me over from not being able to see what's happening at camp. I don't know about you, but I'm always speculating. Okay, I'll watch a drill clip, 8 seconds, 10 seconds, and then try to piece together or patch together what someone else shared. Okay, I see this rep, and all the quarterbacks are under center, and Monken's over here on this left-hand side of the screen closest to Lamar. The next clip, which could be shared by a totally different reporter, Monken's way over there on the other side, but all the quarterbacks are in the same order. They're still under center. And this is me. I'm sitting there doing the mental math. Okay, how long would it take Monken to walk from one side to the other? Looks like at least a probably 30-second walk to walk around the drill, not get in the way. But he's standing still as the drill is occurring because he's watching. So let's double that time. We're talking about 1 minute. I'm actually over here calculating drill periods to determine how many snaps are they getting under center in a 1 minute time period, a fictitious 1 minute time period that I created with some math in my brain, trying to figure out how much time are they spending under center, because there's no film out there, obviously. I know it's ridiculous, and it probably sounds ridiculous to you, but as a former high school coach, I was introduced to the game from a coaching standpoint by doing in-person scouting. That was my job the first year, because I was basically a tree who knew nothing. And we had to go get the film. We had to go watch the game and record it at the same time. So one person would film, and then one person would take notes. It was a difficult job because you're constantly communicating with each other and trying to gather as much information as possible in between snaps when you're not recording. Did a player go off the field? Did a coach argue with the referee? Was a coach arguing with a player? You're trying to get anecdotal information, but you're also trying to get information about under center versus shotgun snaps even before the game. So when I talk to you about how maniacal I am looking at the plays that Jeff Zrebiec and others share, that's where it came from. It certainly seems like we're going to get some under center stuff in the offense, but regardless, Derrick Henry is effective in either role. It's ridiculous to assert that he is not. So I wanted to provide some perspective on the defense's early dominance to training camp, not running it down or minimizing it. I guess I did actually minimize it. Look, it was great news for Zach Orr and all the new position coaches. There was perhaps one negative report or one negative moment that wasn't highlighted or talked about a whole lot. I guess Harbaugh, Orr, and Arthur Millette had an animated discussion after a touchdown by the Ravens offense, I think Monday, in a goal line drill. And Harbaugh's quote, two of them, I'll piece it together, was really cool. He said, I think this comes from one of Zrebiec's articles. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing his name. We try to be, or we say that we're trying to be obnoxious in our communication, overzealous in our communication. I totally agree with that, and I can hear those words being said by lesser coaches than Harbaugh, but guys that I was fortunate enough to be around and learn some things from them. His quote finished with, we want to have those conversations all the way through camp about all of our football details all the time. We want to be quality controlling ourselves all the time. I thought it was absolutely a fantastic quote by him, and a good thing that they would have a, quote, animated conversation about a coverage, trying to figure out leverage, how to cover it, whether you have help to a certain side. Not an easy conversation, for sure, to have in front of other players, teammates, to have in front of coaches, to have in front of fans who are blessed enough, I guess, to be able to watch training camp, and reporters who are going to go out and put it out on social media. I guess that would be the drawback. My point is, everything's not going to be easy, and it's certainly not easy to wake up and decide to pay a little bit more attention to Ravens reporters, Ravens Report content creators than maybe you have been, just because it was an extremely difficult loss to the Chiefs that, oh, by the way, the Ravens will have a chance to avenge, I think, starting on September 5th. I appreciate you guys' time. This was some of my observations from training camp, just based on the reports that we get from those reporters who are those media representatives who are blessed enough to be able to go watch training camp. Appreciate you guys' time. And if you think other Ravens fans would enjoy perhaps this commentary and some observations of mine, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.